Hello, students. Today we're going to review substitutes and complements. So we learned when we did our demand side shifters, we learned that there were substitute goods and complement goods. But then in the supply side, we also learned that substitutes and complements can change the supply line. Therefore, today we just want to clarify these, review them, and make sure everyone can understand. We're going to start with the demand side. First of all, let's talk about the change in the price of a substitute good. This is probably the easiest one for us to understand. This is a demand shifter. If I can substitute Coke for Pepsi. This is easy to understand, right? I can substitute turkey meat for ham on my sandwich. So if Coke becomes extremely expensive, well, generally speaking, the demand of Pepsi is going to go up because demanders will switch from Coke to Pepsi. Now, if something becomes cheaper, for instance, if the price of turkey, like turkey meat for your sandwiches, goes way down, then what's going to happen to the demand for ham? Well, obviously, people will shift their purchasing to the least expensive product. And so the demand for the sliced ham, will generally go down. So this is a demand shifter. In the same way, a complement good is a demand shifter, the change in the price of a complement good. These are two things that are normally purchased together. They're complement goods. Okay, like here's an example. If I were to go bowling, I pay to buy my ticket to go bowling, but I also rent bowling shoes. Yeah, sure. So when I buy a printer, I also buy print cartridges, the ink. So these two things I purchase together. I tend to buy them together. So what happens to the market for bowling shoes when the price of bowling goes up? Okay, if the price of bowling is going up, less people are going to go bowling. So the market for bowling shoes will go down. Does that make sense? These are complement goods. So if people are not demanding one item, they're not going to demand the other item either. What happens to the printer ink market when the price of printers goes down? So if the price of printers becomes extremely cheap, everyone's going to go buy printers. The quantity demanded will go up. Therefore, the demand for the printer ink market will increase. Okay, so these are demand shifters, and let's just review the demand curve. Look at this page here. Look what happens. This is a demand line, a downward sloping demand line. If I shift from a D1 to a D2, that shows an increase in demand. If I shift from a D1 to a D3, that's a decrease in demand. Okay, let's shift over to supply. Change in the price of a substitute good in production. Okay, if one company is making two things that are similar, like it uses the same resources to make these two things. Like for instance, maybe they're making pens and markers, or they're making trucks and SUVs. They're making jeans and denim jackets, okay? Think about the production side. The producer wants to make the most expensive item. They like high prices. So if the market for SUVs, like if the price of trucks go up and all of a sudden trucks are more expensive, what will the factory do? Well, the factory will shift their resources to making more trucks, and the market for SUVs, the supply of SUVs will go down. Think about it for jeans and denim jackets. If they're making both items, but all of a sudden the price of denim jackets gets super, super cheap, the supplier is going to shift their resources and they're going to supply more jeans. So this would cause an increase in the supply of jeans because a substitute good in production went down in price. Now let's think about complement goods in production. You got to be careful with this one. A complement good in production is a byproduct of creating a good. So like when two things, it kind of like happens as a side, it kind of happens like because I made this one thing, this other thing is made too. So like if I'm making lumber, the sawdust that comes out of the lumber, that's a complement good. If I'm making wheat, So I'm making wheat, but straw is made from the same thing. So straw also is made. It's a byproduct of making wheat. So what happens? These are complement goods in production. So if when you make wheat, straw is also made, it's a byproduct. If the price of wheat goes down, what happens to the market for straw? Well, if the price of wheat goes down, that means nobody's going to produce wheat anymore because it's too cheap. So that means the market for straw, the supply of straw, will also go down. You will have a decrease in the supply. So let's look at the supply line and let's remember a decrease in supply versus an increase. If I'm on an S1 and I move to an S2, what is that? That is an increase in supply. If I'm at S1 and I move to S3, what is that? That's a decrease in supply. Okay, now that we've reviewed substitutes and complements, I want you to try to do the worksheet on substitutes and complements.